All right, what's going on, everybody? It's fast cards, fast money. Just me. Like I said, the rest of the team's doing a fantasy football draft right now, and I don't blame them. It's kind of that time of the year, but NASCAR is still going on. We're still going to be covering it all year long. It's kind of the only thing that we cover, so we try to make sure that we do it well. But talking about the Southern 500 this weekend on Sunday for the Cup race. Uh, very different from the Xfinity series in the Truck Series race. This one's 367 laps. It's a 500-mile race. That's a lot of points up for grabs. This is going to be a very high-scoring DFS weekend. So the Xfinity series and the Truck Series, like dominators are kind of important. You still want to try to get them, but for the Cup Series, if you don't get the dominator, there's a good chance, there's probably a very high chance that you're not going to cash. This is a pure, just it is a marathon. It is a long race. It's very hard on the drivers. It's very hard on the equipment. And the track's going to change a lot too. It'll, start racing in the sun and then they'll kind of finish at night. So just a lot of things to kind of keep in mind. And they raced here earlier this year. However, they have repaved part of turn two. And turn two had a lot of character to it. There was a lot of bumps that a lot of drivers would have to navigate. We saw a lot of accidents kind of around the turn two, turn three, mainly just the turn two area. So it'll be interesting to see how that really changes things. But Darlington historically has been a pretty tough track to pass, ride it right around the wall, maintaining tires. They're in the 750 horsepower package, so kind of keep that in mind. If you're comparing, other tracks, there's two packages you got to keep in mind. So they're on the 750 horsepower package. It's the first race of the playoffs, so that'll be kind of fun to watch. And then again, gotta love COVID. So with no practice and qualifying, you just unload and go. So, crew chiefs and teams are really kind of taking a guess, going off a lot of simulator work of how they think the track is going to react and how they think the car is going to react to the track as well. So let's talk about the picks here. If you look at the 10K range, they really shoved in a lot of drivers here. The 9K range is really, really small this week. There's only 3 guys in that 9K range, but Logano up to Larson, who are we targeting and why? I think this race comes down to, really 2 teams. It's going to be either Hendrick or Gibbs. And which one of them is going to show up, I'm not really sure. In the first Darlington race, it was Gibbs. We saw Christopher Bell run extremely well. Martin Truex Jr. dominated the race. Kyle Busch had one of the best cars. Hamlin, ran well. Not that the Hendrick cars didn't run well. It's just the JGR cars had it dialed in. They had it figured out. I would imagine they're going to be bringing very similar setups again, so they should be good. But there's a lot of unpredictability with one, racing at a different time of the year, and 2, with that repave. And we've had a lot of races too in between, the first Darlington race. So a lot of teams have learned a lot of things, have expanded on their notebooks. And it's playoff time. So these teams are putting a lot of effort and focus into this. But that said, I still think you got to pick either one or maybe even 2 between Larson, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex Jr. Really kind of comes down to who you're the most confident with. I think all of them have a really high chance of leading this race. I think all of them have a high chance of dominating this race. It just kind of comes down to who you're the most confident in. Larson is the most expensive of the 3. He has the least amount of place differential points. However, he has been kind of the fastest driver all year long. Kyle Busch has the most place differential points, but of the 3, he's probably the least likely to lead. But again, I'm still throwing him into that category. And then Truex. Truex dominated this race. He's been really fast all year long in the 750 horsepower package. I would expect him to probably carry the most ownership, and for good reason. It's going to be hard to make a case against Truex. But Byron, Keselowski, and Logano, they just lack the dominator upside for me. I think they all offer some place differential, but this is a long race. There's a lot of laps. You got to get those guys who are going to lead you to those laps and pick up those dominator points. I think either Larson, Busch, or Truex is a good place to start. And then it kind of comes down to, some other players on the slate. So Harvick, Hamlin, and Elliott. Harvick, I think, is just going to get outscored. I don't see him. He's probably just going to run around where he starts. I mean, this is what we've seen SHR do all year long. But the race is long enough that him and, Rodney Childers can figure it out, maybe can get their car, where it needs to be by the end of the race. But by then it might be too late. You need those dominator points. And we haven't really seen Harvick out front at all this year. Hamlin starts second right next to Ryan Blaney. JGR was extremely fast the first time here. If Blaney struggles or if Hamlin's able to get around him early, this is a really tough track to pass. So I think Hamlin has a great chance of leading early and maybe even dominating this race before maybe a Larson, a Truex, a Busch takes over, or Hamlin could just simply run away with it. Or, he misses a setup and he, hurts your line starting second. I think it's going to be one or the other there. So kind of just be aware of that. And same thing with Chase Elliott. I think either Hamlin or Elliott are interesting plays as kind of your early lap leaders. I know Larson doesn't start too far behind Elliott, but I think one of them might be able to get the early jump before we see those top guys who start further back, moving their way up through the field. Bowman starts fifth. I think he just kind of gets caught there. I feel more confident in Elliott, Hamlin, and some other guys, leading, and Larson right behind him than I do with Bowman. Christopher Bell ran really well here in the first Darlington race. He offers some place differential upside. I think he had a tire go down maybe in the first Darlington race that hurt his finish a little bit, but he was a top 5, top 8 car all day long. I could see him repeating that. Blaney has won the last 2 races, but historically Darlington really hasn't been one of his better tracks. And I don't think it's long before he gets passed. And then if he's not leading, he's not running those fast laps, he's not going to be picking you up any points. Austin Dillon, I think, is an interesting place differential play to consider. Not going to get to Kurt Busch, not going to get to Tyler Reddick. Then we have the whole 7K range minus Almirola is interesting. I mean, all of these drivers you could make a case for. Chris Buescher, Matt Benedetto, Ross Chastain, Suarez, Custer, like they all start really deep in the field. They all look like really easy place differential plays that you can plug in. Kind of comes down to who are you the most confident in and who potentially might carry the most ownership and it might make sense to pivot off of. Buescher is the most expensive. He finished 9th, I want to say, in the first Darlington race. I don't know if we'll be able to do that again, but we know we should move forward from 34th. I mean, he's capable of finishing, top 15, top 20, and that'll work out fine. Same thing with Matty D. Last week was probably his, I guess maybe Talladega coming up, but I don't really see him winning. But he's still looking for a ride next year, and he starts 30th, and the team's been running better, so I like him. Ross Chastain might get overlooked because of, I don't know, the first Arlington race, his crew chief basically had him stay out on old tires while everyone else pitted and got fresh tires, and he eventually got caught a lap down. Was never able to get that lap back and ended up finishing the race maybe 2 or 3 laps down or something like that. But before that, he actually had really good pace, and he was moving his way forward through the field. And people might get caught up in the finishes and see that, hey, he finished laps down, and they might overlook him, especially because he starts 23rd too. So I think Chastain's a good lower owned play you should consider to maybe be a little bit different, getting off of a Buescher or a De Benedetto or even a Cole Custer. Suarez, I think, kind of gets overlooked in this range. I just think he has the least amount of upside of the drivers here. SHR has been pretty bad all year long, but their 750 horsepower package is significantly better than the 550 package. They're in the 750 this weekend. Custer starts 31st. He should easily be able to at least finish, top 22. Stenhouse, another good place, differential place. Like, these are all, Buescher, De Benedetto, Chastain, Suarez, Custer, Stenhouse, even Briscoe to an extent. Like, these are all place differential plays I think you should consider. All of them are probably going to carry, a good amount of ownership. It just, can you find the right combination of those drivers to work out? I don't see an Almirola working out. I don't see a Priest working out. I don't see a McDowell working out. I think Eric Jones gets outscored from those place differential plays, even though this is probably his best track. Um, I don't see him finishing above, probably 15th to 18th, if that. It's kind of a career day for that team. Bubba Wallace is hard to trust. I mean, JGR, if they're able to somehow pass along the notebook to him and he's able to have a similar setup that the JGR cars have, maybe. But we've been saying that all year long, and it's usually there's a pretty big gap, maybe either driver skill wise or, equipment setup wise or whatever it is. And it's just hard to trust them starting 19th. Alfredo, even though he starts deep, never really carries that much ownership. But this is a really long, tough racetrack. It's hard to trust him. Newman, I think, is going to be the most popular punt play, just because of how he ran in the first Darlington race. He was a top 15 car at that race. And if he is able to repeat that, he's going to be a good play. But recently, Newman's finishes have been a big concern of ours. He knows he's losing his ride this year. It seems like kind of the end of the road for Newman there. So I don't think he's, really that motivated. But another team, so I think he's trending in the wrong direction, but a team that's trending in the right direction would be Corey LaJoy. Starts 25th. I think he might be a little bit lower owned than the Newman ownership. It's a good way to be different. He has some place differential baked in there. I think he should finish right around where Newman finishes. Probably doesn't have as much upside as Newman has, but I think he's a little bit safer and can work out. And then this is not a week to play any of the ugly punt plays. Just a mechanical failure is too high. I don't really see a ton of wrecks in Darlington. It's just, they kind of get single file and they clock off lap after lap after lap. You really need a lot of wrecks for those guys to work out. And another thing to note too, I put all the playoff drivers in yellow, just so you're kind of aware of who is kind of, going to have a spotlight on them, who isn't. You'll be seeing the playoff points all kind of race long. So to sum it up, it really comes down to, do you trust JGR or do you trust Hendrick more? And then kind of those stables, which are the drivers are you most confident with? Maybe it's pairing, a couple Hendrick guys with a couple JGR guys. Maybe it's all JGR. Maybe it's all Hendrick. But I think it's going to be one of those two on Sunday. But should be interesting. First playoff race, revisiting a track that we've already been at. A lot of changes though with the repave and the kind of the change in temperatures throughout the night, and a lot has happened since the first Darlington race. So should be long, should be single file. Hopefully you get the guy that's clocking off those laps led, because it's going to be a high scoring DFS weekend. If you're able to nail those dominators and kind of avoid maybe the higher owned chalky plays that bust, if any of them do bust, I think it's going to be a pretty good DFS day for you. So that'll do it. All the other videos are live right now. Questions, comments, drop them down in the comments below. You can pull this up over on Twitter. It's at FastCarsFM. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, and best of luck, everybody, this weekend.